Joining me now is GB News host Darren Grimes. Darren, let's start in Ireland with the very sudden resignation of the Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar. I wonder if this has got anything to do with the Irish public's overwhelming rejection of his attempts to gender neutralise the Constitution and his unrelenting globalist agenda.
Well, be right, Rita. I mean, you don't exactly have to be Mystic Meg to figure that one out, do you? This is after a final hurrah with the only other politician that's quite as useless as him, Rita, which is President Biden. He was over there in America for a St. Patrick's Day across the pond. Now, of course, that was laden with the usual political platitudes that Varadkar is renowned for, but he dropped the mic and he flounced off as soon as he got back. He's probably gone, Rita, to work for the bureaucrats in Brussels or Davos. But look, don't let this emotionally charged swan song fool you. He's a real piece of work. He's the master of the last minute twist, because under his reign, as you mentioned, we saw referendums come crashing down, like this poorly staged theatre production stripping woman and mother from the Constitution, as if words could ever diminish the essence of what they actually represent, something you've covered on this show many times before. He tried to steer Ireland into the fast lane of progressive politics, but it actually turns out that the vehicle was missing a few gears, Rita. This is the problem. His portrayal of St. Patrick, by the way, as an early advocate of open borders in the middle of a mass immigration crisis was as well, I think, a historical hopscotch that's left even the diaspora in America watching over here to be utterly perplexed by it. And I mean, as he takes a final bow, Rita, we've got to be left to wonder if the next act could be even more, frankly, zany as the last has been. Goodbye, Leo Varadkar. You will not be missed here in Britain, and I very much doubt you'll be remembered in Ireland.
Now to former US President Barack Obama, who visited Prime Minister Rishi Sunak at number 10 Downing Street. It was a bit of a surprise visit, a courtesy visit it was called. What was it about? He's hardly been a friend of Britain in recent years. In the run-up to the Brexit referendum, Obama warned the UK that it would find itself at the back of the queue when it came to trade deals if Brexit got up.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a wonder, Rita, that we managed to prize Obama from Martha's Vineyard, isn't it, really? He's probably there with Meghan Markle and the rest of them. But look, this is all a sop for the Obama Foundation, because you're absolutely right. After his infamous Brexit cameo, where he pitched Britain to the back of the queue, it was almost like a Love Actually moment, where, you know, the US president is there to act as the bully, but this was actually at the request of a British Prime Minister at the time, David Cameron, who is about as welcome here as Malcolm Turnbull in Australia. But look, you'd think that he'd learned that British politics is our garden, right? Not for treading in by even the most charming of ex-American presidents, which I'm sure he is. But here he is, Rita, and he's talking about AI. He's talking about artificial intelligence with all the finesse of a Silicon Valley tycoon. He's funded by most of them, by the way. The liberal elite fund this Obama Foundation, and they probably consider a private jet a shared economy experience at this rate, despite, of course, lecturing us at every 2 minutes about our carbon footprints. But the Obama Foundation are here in Britain, or were, to angle to become the AI think tank, a digital oracle, if you will, for global consensus. But Rita, I think this is a really dangerous moment, because before we all jump on this bandwagon, let's remember that history isn't a programmable algorithm that you can code for political correctness. Great leaders and historical truths don't need a woke makeover, which is what a load of the AI tech giants are doing. So I would profit the idea that actually Obama's vision of AI will probably align with the kind of digital amnesia that benefits the bias of tech giants that work against conservatives. And I think it's a consensus that Britain, Australia, America can fine well do without. So basically, Rita, I think he should stick to climate summits where he can, enlighten us all on reducing our carbon footprints in between all of these private jet landings and, buying as much space at Martha's Vineyard that he possibly can, over actually helping tech giants entrench their massively liberal bias and disproportionately seeking to actually erase conservatives from the public square entirely. No, thank you, President Obama.
Now, police in Scotland have denied that they've been instructing their officers to target actors and comedians when it comes to enforcing the country's new hate crime laws. But a slide from the training module that the coppers are looking at actually says threatening and or abusive material could be communicated through the public performance of a play. So the stage is a place where an offence of this kind could be made, as Scotland seems to be a very strange place these days. It's prosecuting people for all sorts of so-called hate crimes, curbing free speech, and it seems to have got worse since Nicola Sturgeon left. I thought she was bad enough, but her successor is bad news.
Yes, we've gone from silly sturgeon to Humza useless, right? Gone are the days of the Scotland being the bastion of Enlightenment values, because Scottish police are actually, they're accusing J.K. Rowling, they're accused rather, of inventing a fictional character, Rita, as part of this hate crime clampdown, which comes into force on the 1st of April. They started a fictional character called Joe, who thinks that sex is binary and bizarrely calls for transgender people to be sent to gas chambers. I wonder what link they're trying to make here, those sickos in this police force. This is just grotesque, Rita, right? And of course, as I mentioned there, Humza Useless has championed this to the hilt. This is a bonny law turning into a battleground for comedians and free thinkers. I've spoken to many comedians in Scotland, Rita. We've got some of them employed by the channel I work for. And actually they're saying, look, I'm scared to actually do a routine in Scotland because I'm worried I'll get 7 years in the slammer. This is the really quite sinister start that Scotland has started itself on, the introduction of hate crime hubs. I mean, it sounds like something from a dystopian novel. Orwell must be spinning in his grave thinking, why didn't I come up with that one? It's actually, the Scottish police have so many other problems. Scotland has a really bad drug problem, for example. So why are we giving Scottish police additional burdens to be truffling out hate like it's some rare culinary delicacy? We've got to ask what's next. This is auditing Britain's humour, well, Scotland's humour, but where it starts, it may not end, because Labour are going to get into power in England too, and that will mean that they actually criminalise misogyny and misgendering, Rita. So I'm afraid that Britain is on a merry dance towards totalitarianism, right? This is a future that, as I say, George Orwell will be shaking his head either saying, I told you so, or damn boys, why didn't I think of that one? I'm really worried about Scotland, and forget independence from the United Kingdom, Rita, because they can't even manage to put themselves together to be a free country without some appointed nanny, it seems to me.
Now, former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries has written a very thought-provoking piece on abortion for the Daily Mail, a very much nuanced piece, something that's missing from the public debate. Now, there is going to be a House of Commons bill looking at decriminalising abortion past 24 weeks. She wrote of her own experience as a nurse helping with terminations of unwanted babies. And the following passage I'm going to read is a bit graphic, so viewer discretion is advised. She writes, on delivering a unwanted 27-week-old baby boy, she wrote, I have never forgotten what I saw. There lay a tiny baby boy, blinking, covered in mucus, blood and amniotic fluid, gasping for breath, his little arms and legs twitching. I was stunned. He was breathing, I insisted. The nurse looked embarrassed and muttered, the mother probably got her dates wrong. Maybe she was more than 27 weeks pregnant. I can't bring myself to tell you how she disposed of the body of that tiny newborn. Now, it must be pointed out here, Nadine is pro-choice. Unlike the majority of people who are pro-choice, she's against late-term abortion. Many polls show us that the majority of people are against second and third term abortions, but that nuance is rarely reflected in the public debate, Darren. It's something that the media really doesn't cover well at all. tell me about these bills. And I know there's another bill where 700 medical professionals are urging MPs to actually lower the abortion time limit from 24 weeks to 22 weeks. Tell me about this debate, because this polling in the US, it's consistent with the polling in the UK, which shows 70% of British women favour this reduction from 24 to 22 weeks. So it shows that there is a very large group, I would argue the majority, who are pro-choice in the first trimester, certainly, but when it gets later in the pregnancy, they're very much against late-term abortions, and that includes in the second trimester.
Very well said, Rita. I mean, that piece by Nadine Dorries I found profoundly moving, actually. And this is all a hangover from the COVID pandemic, where MPs, I would argue, really quite extreme MPs when it comes to this debate, the abortion debate, they got what they wanted with at-home abortions, and now it's a legacy from lockdown, but we've extended it where you pop a pill and terminate your pregnancy. Now, these are Labour Party MPs, Stella Creasy and Diana Johnson. They've actually pulled the pin, I would argue, on the grenade of medical ethics with amendments that actually seek to transform abortion into an over-the-counter commodity up to birth. Forget the 24-week safeguard. They say it's outdated. The need for a doctor to consult with you, because this is, as you well know, Rita, quite a dangerous thing to do. Well, they say that that's an archaic formality, right? But I argue that actually this would be like opening Pandora's box. This push for decriminalisation actually glosses over the complexities and the nuances that you mentioned so well there. The narrative it being spun is one of empowerment of women. But actually, I would argue that that dodges the bullet of consequence. It dodges the bullet of accountability. It dodges the bullet of safeguarding. All of those faster than a politician might well sidestep a direct question from you, Rita, on here on Sky News Australia. But the underlying melody of this movement that these MPs are part of, it actually sings of a really stark truth, which is the desire to redefine the sanctity of life as I see it until it's as disposable as the morning's coffee cup. And I think that's where public polling is. Public polling says, I'm pro-choice, but I am not pro these terminations at home via popping a pill, which could be dangerous for the mother, which are certainly obviously dangerous for the unborn, and really rule out the need for a healthcare professional to be on board with that. So I would argue there is a need for caution, for actual ethical consideration here, because convenience is one thing, but we can't sweep it under the rug like an inconvenient truth, right? This is a tale of two pandemics, one viral and the other ideological. And I really, really do not want to see British women get caught up in that ideological battleground in the name of freedom, because I don't think it is a freedom, Rita. I actually think it's incredibly negligent and dangerous.
It absolutely is, and I would argue immoral. And I think, again, that opinion is shared, according to those polls, by the great majority, that there has to be a term limit. Now, whether that line is 24 weeks, 22 weeks, many European countries, that line is between 12 and 15 weeks. Wherever you determine that line, to have abortion right up to birth, I mean, really, any woman who's gone through a pregnancy and has undergone ultrasounds where they've seen their baby at 16 weeks, 18 weeks, 22 weeks, they could tell you it's not just a clump of cells at that stage. Darren Grimes, thank you so much for your time this evening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rita.